If you make a list of the best attacking players of the 2010s, you put Messi on it, Ronaldo, Neymar, Hazard, maybe Salah, maybe De Bruyne, and at some point, usually pretty far down the list, someone goes, alright, Marco Reus. And then comes that one sentence, you all know it. What if Marco Reus had stayed healthy? It's one of those lines that just feels true. It wraps everything up in a neat little story. A tragic career, constant injuries, a player who never quite became what he could have been. And honestly, for a long time, I saw him that way too. To me, Reus was always that player you sigh about. The one you look at and say, man, what a shame. He could have been so much bigger. But then I started digging into the data. Not highlights, not YouTube comps, not individual moments. The actual numbers over multiple seasons, compared to the best attacking players in Europe. And guys, I was genuinely not ready for what I found. So here's the question. Was Marco Reus actually way closer to the absolute elite than most of us ever realized? This story starts where it also ends, in Dortmund. Marco Reus is born in Dortmund in 1989. He grows up with Borussia Dortmund, comes through the club's youth setup, and then Dortmund lets him go. He ends up at Rot-Weiß Aalen, 3rd division. That is not where you want to be if your dream is to become a top-level footballer. But he grinds through it, earns his move to Gladbach, and that's where everything changes. At Mönchengladbach, he explodes. Fast, creative, direct, dangerous in front of goal. And in 2012, he makes the decision that ends up defining his entire career. He goes back to Dortmund, back home. Klopp is building what is probably the most exciting team in Europe at that moment, and Reus fits into it like they built the whole thing around him. And then in 2013, the big one, Champions League final. Dortmund versus Bayern, Wembley. Dortmund are brave, aggressive, they go toe-to-toe. Then they equalize, and then Dortmund loses 2-1. And in that moment, something gets attached to Reus that never really leaves him. The feeling of almost. Okay, now we get to the part that's the real reason I'm making this video. Because the season after that, 2013-14, was not the drop-off you might expect, it was the opposite. And I want to show you exactly why. But first, I need to explain one thing. In football, there are basically two broad types of attacking players. They are the ones who score goals, and they are the ones who create them. Finishers and creators. You know the archetypes. Lewandowski is in the box smashing chances home. Özil is outside the box threading the final pass. And here's the thing. Almost every elite attacking player is world-class at one of those jobs. But very, very few are truly elite at both at the same time. And that's exactly what I want to show you, because I got access to a dataset covering the 200 best attacking players from Europe's top 5 leagues in that 2013-14 season. And I wanted to know, where does Marco Reus actually rank? Alright, first graphic. And don't worry, I'll walk you through exactly what you're looking at. Every dot here is a player. And this chart is basically asking one question. How creative is this player? The further right a dot is, the more creative actions that player produces per game. That means things like dribbles into dangerous areas, through balls, passes into space, anything designed to create chances for teammates. That's on one axis. And the higher up a player is, the more often their passes directly lead to a shot. So, you play the ball, your teammate immediately shoots. That's one of the clearest ways to measure direct chance creation. And now look at where Reus is, top right. Out of 200 players, in that season, Reus created more chances than almost any attacking player in Europe. And look who's next to him. David Silva, Mesut Özil. These are pure playmakers. These are guys whose entire job it is to create chances. That's what they live on. Reus is right there with them, and he's also scoring goals on top of that. And keep that in mind. Second graphic. And this is where things get really weird. This chart is asking a different question. It's not just about creativity anymore, it's asking how much of a team's total attack runs through one player. Goals, assists, shots, big chances created. Everything combined. And on the other axis, it measures whether a player does both goals and assists, or whether he mostly specializes in one. So basically, is he a specialist, or is he a true all-around attacking hub? And Reus? He's right next to Luis Suárez and Lionel Messi. Not vaguely in the same zone, not kind of close, right there. In that season he carried basically the same level of attacking responsibility as those two. And he did it while playing for Borussia Dortmund, not Barcelona or Liverpool. And he wasn't some pure creator sitting outside the box either. And that is what the next chart shows. Third graphic. And this one is honestly my favorite in the entire dataset, because it completely destroys the biggest myth about Marco Reus. This chart measures two things. First, how often does a player shoot from inside the penalty area? Not from 30 yards, not from distance, from inside the box. That's where goals are scored. The further right you are, the more often you're getting into the most dangerous area on the pitch and actually getting shots off. Most elite creators in Europe sit in the bottom right on this chart. They create a lot, but they don't attack the box themselves very often. Reus is top right. Per game, he was delivering more direct shot assists than basically almost anyone in Europe. And at the same time, he was constantly putting himself into shooting positions inside the box. Very few players do that because it's hard, because those are two completely different skill sets. You have to be the guy who plays the final pass and the guy who arrives in the box to finish the move. Reus was doing both every single game. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, 2013-14 was obviously insane, but was that just one ridiculous season, or was that simply who Marco Reus was? Now let's move the timeline forward a little, because between 2014 and 16, something happened that for almost any other player would have ended in transfer. Real Madrid wanted him, Barcelona wanted him, Bayern Munich wanted him, and his release clause, 25 million euros. In today's market, that barely gets you an average Premier League defender. So what does Reus do? He stays, he signs a new contract and removes the clause, and consciously commits to a club that isn't realistically competing to win the Champions League. In a football world where basically everyone says yes the second Real Madrid calls, Reus says, no thanks, I'm staying here. And that decision matters, because from that moment on, his career gets judged differently from the rest of his generation, because he turned down the stage where superstars are made. And then come the injuries. The part everybody knows. World Cup 2014, final warm-up game before the tournament, Reus gets injured, Germany goes on to win the World Cup without him. Euro 2016, injured again. Euro 2021, not selected, and in between, muscle tears, ligament issues, knee problems. And I'm not gonna lay some sad piano soundtrack over this. Injuries are part of football, but with Reus, it wasn't just how often they happened, it was when they happened. That clearly did something to how people remembered him. But, and this is the key point, it didn't really change his football, because every single time he came back, he produced, not eventually, immediately. From 2013 to 2020, he played 155 matches. That doesn't sound like much when you realize guys like Messi or Hazard have over 250 in that same span. But here's the thing. Those 155 matches are more than enough to show something pretty incredible. And now we get to the data that is really why I made this video. Because everything I showed you earlier for that single 2013-14 season, I ran the exact same analysis again. But this time, not for one season, but the entire period from 2013 to 2020, 7 years, all top attacking players in Europe aggregated. And I'm about to show you 3 charts that completely change the conversation. This time, the question is simple. How many goals does a player score per game, and how many chances does he create per game across 7 years? To the right, players who score a lot. Up top, players who create a lot. Top right means you do both. Messi is where Messi always is, alone in his own galaxy, way out there, top right. But look at Reus. He's in the upper right quadrant. Across those 155 matches, he scored more often than 96% of all top attacking players in Europe, and at the same time, he created more chances than 98% of them. That's not one hot season dragging the average up, that's 7 years, 155 games, and every time he was on the pitch, he was simultaneously one of the most dangerous scorers and one of the best creators in Europe. And Reus did that in Dortmund without a Champions League semi-final run, without the global superstar hype machine. 5th graphic, and now let's flip the perspective again. This time, the chart asks, how much total creative work does a player do per game? Not just the final pass, but the overall creative output, and how many goals does he score? So why does this matter? Because this chart answers the question running through this entire video. Was Reus a scorer who happened to get a few assists, or was he a creator who chipped in with goals? And the answer is neither. He was both at the same time, at a level only a tiny handful of players in Europe reached across this period. In creative production, he ranks in roughly the top 1.5%. In goal scoring, he ranks in roughly the top 4%. And that's over 7 years. That's not a highlight reel, that's not cherry-picked clips, that was his normal level. 6th and final graphic, and this is the one that closes the loop. Remember that third graphic from earlier? Shots inside the box versus shots assist? This is the exact same idea, but no over the full 7-year sample. And the reason I'm showing it again is simple. One season can be an outlier, anybody can have one amazing year, anybody can go nuclear for 6 months, but when the same pattern holds for 7 years, it's not random anymore. At that point, it's not a streak. And Reus is, once again, in the place where almost nobody is, top right. Over multiple seasons, he consistently did both, week after week, season after season. And in both categories, he's sitting among roughly the best 2 to 5% attacking players in Europe. And honestly, that's the part that surprised me the most. Because I didn't expect it to be this clear. I knew Reus was good, obviously, but I didn't think that over years he was operating at a level that put him right there with the very best attacking players in the world. Not in one category, in the combination of all of them. And that's the moment where the whole what if narrative starts to fall apart. Because what does what if actually mean? It means what if he had fulfilled his potential, but the numbers say he did, again and again, every single time he played. Marco Reus did not have a potential problem, he had a visibility problem. So why don't we talk about him in the same breath as the all-time greats? No Champions League trophy, no World Cup stage where the whole world got to watch him, and he stayed in Dortmund instead of moving to a club where people automatically stamp you as world class. But none of those things actually tell you how good he was on the pitch. We confuse visibility with quality, and we confuse narrative with the truth. Marco Reus was not Messi, he was not Ronaldo, he was not some football alien who bent the sport around himself, but for almost a decade he was one of the most complete attacking players in Europe. A player who could score, create chances, arrive in the box, set up teammates, and do all of it at the same time, at a level that almost nobody reaches. His career doesn't deserve to be remembered as a tragedy, it deserves to be remembered for what it actually was, an uncrowned elite career.